Blinken looking at Biden with the look of concern as when you're driving at night in the middle of nowhere and all your engine lights come on. And you think just a little bit longer, a little bit further, you can make it. Please don't die. Someone else wrote, what's up with Blinken? Is he okay? He looks worried.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey everyone, happy Friday. Well, Stephanie, I guess the big news to end this week is that it seems there will not be a government shutdown because Congress surprisingly managed to pass a stopgap measure on Wednesday, which I thought they weren't going to do anything at least until today, if not, I think tomorrow is the actual deadline. But they passed it on Wednesday. And so what they're going to do is they are going to continue to fund the government in 2 stages through February 2nd. And we talked about this briefly a week or two ago when House Speaker Mike Johnson first brought up this whole ladder approach to funding. So the House voted to pass the measure on Tuesday, and then the Senate got on board on Wednesday, and they passed it 87-11. And as we mentioned previously, there are 12 required spending bills on the table that need to be decided on. But having this 2-stage process is going to allow Congress to break it down. So they have 65 days to complete the first 4 bills and then another 13 days to finish the other 8 bills. So hopefully everyone can get their shit together in the next 2 months. And
you would think, but I guarantee they won't.
That's the thing. And it's funny because I read an article in the Huffington Post and it was talking about how this current Congress is apparently the least productive Congress since the Great Depression in the 1930s. Like, what do you think?
Okay, well, Huffington Post is like super biased, I think.
Yes.
But I am waiting. I am waiting to see how the next 2 funding stages go with Mike Johnson in charge before I, formulate my opinion, I guess. But I will say that we didn't pass an outrageous omnibus spending bill. So in my opinion, that's progress. I mean, yeah, things could have been way better, but with everything that happened, I'm shocked that this went through and we didn't end up with some massive spending bills. So I think that that's good and they're far from where they need to be, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm not holding out too much hope though.
No, but I think you're right. It's so they went ahead and did this, but all this really did was postpone things. So Now we'll wait until February and see what actually happens. So in other news, as we talked about on Wednesday, Biden was meeting with Xi Jin Ping, and apparently the meeting went well, and Biden reported that they made real progress in regards to their talks about reestablishing military communication and slowing down or stopping the flow of fentanyl into the United States and addressing the AI concerns that we talked about on Wednesday. And according to Biden, this meeting resulted in, quote, some of the most productive and constructive discussions we've had. So that sounds pretty positive, right?
It sounds positive.
It sounds positive. But Stephanie, we knew that Biden would inevitably say or do something to embarrass the United States or escalate tensions with China. And as Biden does, right on cue, he absolutely did. But it wasn't during the meeting. It was actually after the meeting when Biden was doing a press conference. And a reporter asked him if he would still refer to Xi Jinping as a dictator like he did back in June. And I want to play Biden's response.
Yes. And Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator to term that we used earlier this year? Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is a guy who runs a country that is a country that is based on the government of the different lives. Anyway.
So if you couldn't hear that clearly, he basically said, well, look, he's a dictator in the sense that he's a guy who runs a country that's a communist country. So honestly, I can't argue with that, right? Because it's the truth. But after Biden made that comment, the room just erupted with reporters shouting. And then Biden just like turns around and walks off the stage in typical Biden fashion. But the best part to me for this whole thing is the reaction from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. So he was sitting next to Biden during the press conference, and I was reading an article in Business Insider, and they so eloquently put it. They said, quote, Blinken appeared to be taken aback, having laid the groundwork for Wednesday's meeting with months of careful diplomacy, end quote. And even former Italian diplomat Marco Cornelius described Blinken's body language by posting on X, quote, 12 months of hard work and diplomacy thrown in the toilet with a simple word, end quote. But the best comments that I've seen are actually coming from random people on social media, because they're just talking about the look on Blinken's face. And if you watch the video, you can see Biden's talking and Blinken just gets this blank look. And he just stares at Biden with what I can only describe as a please don't fuck this up look on his face. And so I've been reading these hilarious comments. Someone wrote like, what is Antony Blinken so nervous about? Blinken looking at Biden with the look of concern as when you're driving at night in the middle of nowhere and all your engine lights come on. And you think just a little bit longer, a little bit further, you can make it. Please don't die. Someone else wrote, what's up with Blinken? Is he okay? He looks worried. So it's funny, right? Because he's an idiot anyway. But in a more serious note, like Biden's comments clearly did not sit well with China. So Reuters reported there was a routine briefing yesterday on Thursday, and the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning told reporters, quote, this statement is extremely wrong and irresponsible political manipulation, end quote. CNN also reported that Ning said Biden was being, quote, extremely erroneous, end quote, and said that China, quote, firmly opposes Biden's statement. And Ning further stated, quote, what needs to be pointed out is that there will always be some people with ulterior motives attempting to undermine China-US relations. They will not succeed in doing so, end quote. And I guess she was asked like who that comment was referring to, and then would not give an answer. So I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I think these are pretty strong statements.
I would love to be a fly in the room, like backstage, because everyone in the Biden administration was probably like biting their fingernails, just thinking, what's he going to do to screw this up? I mean, the guy, he can't help himself, I swear. But like, I'm sure that they realize that he has dementia and is bound to say something stupid at least once during the trip. I mean, I was banking on it. And someone was, I think it was ABC News was live streaming it. I couldn't watch. I was like cringing as he was talking. I couldn't even look. But I don't know, like, I kind of think China will probably gloss over it. But didn't he do the same thing like a few months ago where he referred to him as a dictator and it was a big deal? Yeah. And so he did the same thing again.
Yes. And when he did it the first time, China made it very clear that they were not happy with it. And I think that's why the reporter asked, like, would you still refer to him as a dictator? And he's like, absolutely.
See, that's why, like, someone that is in a normal state of mind and healthy wouldn't have done that. So, I mean, this is just showing he's gone. Yeah. But I found a CNN article of all that covered part of the meeting with Xi. And the article reads, quote, he told the audience the most fundamental question shaping U.S.-China relations is whether they are rivals or partners. If we regard each other as the biggest rival, the most significant geopolitical challenge, and an ever-pressing threat, it will inevitably lead to wrong policies, wrong actions, and wrong results. This was Xi. Telling the audience, and it included, I guess, Apple CEO Tim Cook was there, Elon Musk was there, and he said, quote, China is willing to be a partner and friend to the United States. So I don't know, I'm going to surprise you with this, but like, I do think it's a positive sign. I mean, I was really, really worried when they closed off all military talks. So I think this is definitely like moving in a good direction. And let's not forget that China's economy is not doing well. Their housing market is crashing. Unemployment among young people is an issue. And then there's a lot of foreign disinvestment right now. So I think that they need the United States just as much as we need them. Like, they need us to help their economy, thrive. And we are dependent on them for like everything pretty much. So the fact that Xi is extending the olive branch, saying he's willing to be a partner, I think it's good, just considering where we are in the world. Like, we're on the verge of World War III. And if you read between the lines, like, I'm thinking that he's saying he doesn't want war with the United States. I'm hoping that's what he's saying. And I think that's a good sign.
Again, I love your positivity. I don't know that I agree with that though. I don't know if it's just they made it look good because China's still in bed with Russia and
Iran.
And Iran. And I just think if it comes down to it, they're still our enemy. And the biggest thing is the sticking point, which is going to be Taiwan. Like, they can dance around all this other stuff, like the fentanyl and the military talks and the AI stuff. But China has been very firm from the beginning with their stance on Taiwan. And Fox News reported that after the meeting, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying issued a very blunt warning about America's friendly relations with Taiwan, saying that this was the most important and most sensitive issue in China-U.S. relations. And I guess she wrote a post on X stating, quote, "The U.S. side should take real actions to honor its commitment of not supporting Taiwan independence, stop arming Taiwan, and support China's peaceful reunification. China will realize reunification, and this is unstoppable," end quote. So my take on that is that China is basically going to do whatever the fuck China wants to do with Taiwan, and we better not get involved. And I'm sure that their idea of like peaceful reunification, in quotes, is probably very similar to our far left's idea of peaceful protests that occurred here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, Taiwan is a hard line for them. And I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that Biden didn't fuck that one up. I would rather him make the dictator comment than to continue like saying the things he said about Taiwan in the past. I think that they want to make that crystal clear to Biden, especially because, I mean, I don't know how many times it's been, but multiple times he has gone against U.S. policy saying that we would get involved and help Taiwan. And that's not, we don't have an outright policy on that. So I think, they're trying to send a clear message, and I don't blame them. I mean, we kind of know that, but I don't know that Biden knew that. The same CNN article that I was talking about earlier, they said, according to statements from both the U.S. and China Wednesday, the two sides agreed to restore military communications. So, I mean, that's good. And to combat the flow of fentanyl from China to the U.S. during several hours of, quote, constructive meetings. So China labeled the talks as positive and comprehensive, while also highlighting Xi's efforts to spell out Beijing's non-negotiables, such as, again, Taiwan, and then the perceived American efforts to contain China's rise. Like, they want to be the dominant power in the world. I mean, I don't think that's any secret. And
that's why I think this whole like, oh, it was we came to agreement, blah, blah, blah. I just think it's bullshit.
At the end of the day, it's like, it is all bullshit, but I think it's better bullshit than like them just refusing to talk at all. So like, I don't know. It's not good either way. But at the same time, like, I was thinking about it, and like when World War II and World War I broke out, we didn't have the global economy like we do now. I mean, we did, but it wasn't like to the same extent as now. So I do think that everyone's going to be cautious of that. But I don't know. We'll see. So anyhow, like, I was just trying to read between the lines, like what is this guy really thinking? And like, I think that this was like his warning to Biden, and who knows what they talked about, when cameras weren't around, but I think it was his warning. Like, he's going to do it. He's going to invade Taiwan, and we better not get involved. And if we don't, we'll remain friends and partners with China and will not end up in World War III, basically. I think with their economy, doing so poorly, like, why wouldn't they invade Taiwan at this point? Like, if they did, they could take over the semiconductor business, which would obviously help their economy. And none of this came from the meeting. This is just me speculating and like trying to read between the lines. But I just think we know it's coming. Antony Blinken has said multiple times. I mean, multiple people throughout our government have said that it's not a matter of if, but when. We know they're going to do it. And I don't think they're going to wait around for Trump to get back in office and let their economy go to shit. I think they're going to do it soon. And I think this was probably their warning not to get involved. And then with everything going on in the Middle East, I do think that it's a good sign that they're saying that they want to be partners and friends, because as we know, like, they're buddies with Iran, and like, that's not good for us and all of that. So I feel like maybe they were trying to ease tensions a little bit from that regard. I don't know. I'm really trying to look at this from a positive light and like visualize the outcome that I want because of the law of attraction. And I don't want to like call in any more of this like World War III, because it makes me feel like I'm going to have a panic attack thinking about it. But I hope that like we can have a cordial, peaceful relationship moving forward, especially while this whole Israel-Gaza war unfolds. So we'll see. I mean, I know I'm being naive, but that's kind of on purpose because I'm just trying to call in positive things. Now, speaking of Israel and Gaza, did you see these like hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters that tried to get into the DNC headquarters on Capitol Hill?
Oh, yes, I did.
That was a video to watch. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God. And of course, like, hardly anyone's talking about it. I mean, could you imagine if this was, I mean, we know what would happen if it were Trump supporters. But there was an article from Real Clear Politics, and they quoted a protester who said, quote, "We're outside the Democrat Party headquarters. This party claims to be on the side of life and peace and equality, and we're saying that we want them to live up to their values and oppose this horrific war and call for a ceasefire now. And we're being responded to by police shoving anti-war activists down the stairs, shoving peaceful protesters back. And because our party, 80% of us want a ceasefire, they would rather beat up protesters," end quote. Okay. Like I said, we know what would happen because it happened on January 6th. Like, if this were the right doing this, the cops probably would have opened the doors and let them in so that they could call it an insurrection. But this war, it is fucking with the Democrat Party. And like this, it's not going to go well for Biden. Like, they are not going to vote for him when they're calling him Genocide Joe. And it's not like they're going to go vote for Trump. They're not going to do that either. But Biden needs all of these people, all of these activists voting for him and out like getting other people to vote for him. And they're not going to do that. So like, I think he's fucked. What do you think?
Honestly, I still don't think he's even going to be in the running for the presidency.
Yeah,
So
I know.
I don't think it's going to matter what people
True.
think of him. And I don't think it's going to matter what they call him, because the real question in my mind is going to be how Newsom responds to this division within the Democratic Party, because I still firmly believe he's going to somehow end up as the front runner for the presidency. But in regards to like what happened, I find it incredibly ironic that you have a bunch of liberal Congress members that had to be evacuated from the DNC headquarters during the protest, and they're all praising the police for their professionalism and for helping them get out of the building safely. And whatever that fucking protester's comment was nowhere near accurate, because this was not a protest. It was a riot. They surrounded the building. They blocked all the exits. They tried to get inside. They pepper sprayed police. They were getting in fights with the police. And I guess one rep, like, I can't remember which one it was, from Illinois, I believe, he was telling the protesters to keep protesting, but at a safe distance and respect local police authority. And like you said, like, if these were Trump supporters, it would have been a totally different story. From what I read, there was only one arrest And there were at least 6 officers that had to be treated for injuries from getting punched and pepper sprayed. And they put all of the House office buildings on lockdown, like a fucking jail lockdown. And so once again, this to me is a clear example of how a quote peaceful protest for the left is actually a violent riot and not a protest at all. And I love how Fox News reported former Michigan rep and Senate candidate Peter Mayer was very quick to point out the difference between the protesters at the DNC and a march for Israel that happened the previous evening. And he said, quote, 250,000 folks rallying on the mall yesterday to support Israel, peaceful, orderly, strong. 200 anti-Israel protesters outside the DNC tonight. Chaos, weakness, Capitol buildings being locked down. Says a lot, end quote.
Yeah.
And it fucking
we need to start
was.
calling them pro-Hamas protesters or supporters, because that's what it is. And clearly, like, they're filled with all the same hate that Hamas is.
Yes. And so, like, is Biden going to have the FBI look at every surveillance camera and track down everyone that was there, just like they did with the January 6th insurrection? No, it's going to be just like the, quote, protest where these same pro-Hamas groups vandalize federal property and statues at the White House just last week, and nothing was fucking done about it, because it's only an insurrection when it's Trump supporters or conservatives. And so, as usual, this is like literally another example of the complete hypocrisy of the left.
It is. And I just want to share a couple like really good points that I heard recently, because again, like, I think it's important to keep educating ourselves on this situation, because I don't know everything. And sometimes I like see what's happening in Gaza and I'm like, this is fucking insane. Like, I don't want a bunch of children, innocent children, to be bombed and everything else. So this guy brought up a really good point, and he's like, okay, what is Hamas doing? They are hiding behind their innocent people. And he was saying, like, one of their strategies is, like, let's say they're moving out of a tunnel or something, and there's the IDF. They'll bring women and children and throw them in front of them, knowing the IDF are not they're going to hesitate. They are not going to just shoot a woman or a child. And so they're using their own people as shields. Well, why would you do that? Because the IDF care and are not going to shoot innocent people. This is where the interesting point comes in. He's like, imagine flip-flopping that. Imagine Hamas is coming into Israel. Do you think that they would think twice if the Israelis put their women and children in front of them? No, they would murder them in a heartbeat. So they were like, that's how you know who's right and who's wrong. Like, there is evil and there is like people that, there's casualties and everything, but they have some humanity left in them. And that was a great point. And then the other thing, and just so everybody knows, because I've been doing this every night just to learn and understand, all over TikTok, every single night for hours and hours and hours, there are groups of people holding lives where they'll have a whole panel of people that live in Israel, and they will bring in pro-Palestinian people and they will have at it. And so you get to hear points of people that actually, live there, have lived there, lived here, like all different perspectives. And another good point that they brought up is that up until this war broke out, you could leave Gaza and come into Israel. People did it all the time. A lot of people who lived in Gaza, a lot of Arabs worked in Israel. And there are a lot of Arabs that live in Israel, that are in government, like vote, all of that. If you're Jewish, if you're an Israeli Jew and you try to cross the border into Gaza, you will be murdered. So there's the thing. It's not that Israel is holding the Gazans in like this prison. The Gazans won't let anyone in. Like, so what you're hearing, like, I don't think any of these pro-Palestinian protesters truly understand that and understand the conflict and understand who they're dealing with. So I just wanted to like bring that up, because all this stuff, like, I was listening to last night and I was like, yeah, this Hamas is like, gotta go. I mean, they will literally wipe them out if they don't take them out first. So it's just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, and that's what I have to keep coming back to every time, because yes, there are a lot of innocent Palestinians that have been killed in this process, But again, it comes back to, are you supporting a terrorist group that wants to eradicate an entire fucking nation of people and that is very vocal about wanting to do that? They make no excuses for wanting to do it. That's their fucking mission and their goal. Like, no, I will not fucking support that.
Well, and my question to the pro-Palestinian protesters or pro-Hamas, I need to start calling them pro-Hamas protesters. Why are you protesting against Biden? Now, I'm no friend of Biden. We all know that. But why are you protesting against the American government? Why not go protest against Egypt or Jordan? Because guess what? They're not letting any of their fellow Arabs in. They're not letting them come for safety. Why don't you go talk to them? You know what I mean? It's like everyone's just so misguided with this.
Because protests here are just an excuse for fucking angry people and youth to go out and cause destruction and violence and vandalize shit.
Yep. You're right.
I think
That's exactly
majority of them, a good majority of them that are there don't even know what the fuck they're there for. It's just an opportunity to cause chaos.
Right. No, you're totally right. And it's the same thing with what we saw in 2020. It's like they don't give a shit about their cause. They are just angry and they hate the world. That's why they're pro-Hamas. Okay, total shift of topics, but my God, we've got to talk about this. Have you heard about the latest update on George Floyd's did I say that right? George Floyd. I feel like I said that weird. His autopsy?
Yes, I did.
Oh my God. Okay. So Tucker Carlson did an episode where he covers this lie that we've been told, and I was shocked. So I'm just going to play the clip of Tucker.
By a prosecutor there called Amy Sweezy. She's suing her boss. So the case is not actually about George Floyd or Derek Chauvin, but it tells you an awful lot about both of them. In her deposition, which you should read, Amy Sweezy describes a conversation that she had with the county medical examiner, Andrew Baker, right after George Floyd died. Quote, I called Dr. Baker early that morning to tell him about the case and to ask him if he would perform the autopsy on Mr. Floyd. Sweezy recalls all this under oath in the deposition. Quote, he called me later in the day on that Tuesday, and he told me that there were no medical findings that showed any injury to the vital structures of Mr. Floyd's neck. There were no medical indications of asphyxia or strangulation. Oh. In other words, George Floyd, according to the official autopsy, was not murdered. He died instead of what we used to call natural causes, which in his case would include decades of drug use, as well as the fatal concentration of fentanyl that was in his system on his final day. So this was not a killing. It was yet another narcotics OD in a country that records more than 100,000 of them every year. The medical examiner clearly understood that and, in fact, articulated it. And Sweezy explains. He said to me, she recalls in the deposition, Amy, what happens when the actual evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative that everyone's already decided on? And then he said, quote, this is the kind of case that ends careers. In other words, everyone lied about it from the very beginning.
So I think that was a shock to me because it was such a blatant lie. Now, should he have put his knee on his neck like that? Like, no, I still think this guy did something wrong, but I'm not a cop. Like, I'm not going to give my opinion on that. But the narrative that we were told seems to be completely false. Now, that was like a completely separate trial where this all came out recently. Well, Derek Chauvin was given 21 years in federal prison because of the whole George Floyd case. So the sentence was handed down after a plea deal where he pled guilty. And so now what's happening is Chauvin is filing, or he's already filed a motion to vacate, saying that he never would have pled guilty had he known about the theories of Kansas pathologist Dr. William Schaetzel. Am I saying that right? Of Topeka, Kansas. So in an article from the Associated Press, Chauvin said that Dr. William Schaetzel, I don't know if I'm saying this right, told him that he believes that Floyd died not from asphyxia from Chauvin's actions, but from complications of a rare tumor called a paraganglioma that can cause a fatal surge of adrenaline. The pathologist did not examine Floyd's body, but did review the autopsy reports. And he apparently Schaetzel told the Associated Press, quote, "I can't go to my grave with what I know," when they called him to ask about this. And he explained that that was why he reached out to Chauvin. So not only is there this deposition from the medical examiner, but now also this pathologist is saying that according to his findings, George Floyd did not die from injuries to the neck. What do you think?
Honestly, I think this is going to be really tricky because a federal appeals court already rejected his request for a hearing twice. And from what I read, when he pled guilty, he basically waived his rights to an appeal, except on the basis of claiming ineffective counsel. So now it's like up to the Supreme Court to decide if they're going to hear the appeal or not. But let's be honest here. Like, if his murder conviction is overturned, it's going to be a fucking shit show of riots across this country because Antifa and BLM and probably the fucking pro-Hamas people are going to lose their fucking minds. And this is just going to be an excuse for another, quote, summer of love with just fucking violent riots everywhere. And so I really question whether any justice is going to be served, like, in terms of taking back that particular conviction, because it's just going to open up like a shit show. And I think they're going to want to avoid that. And so whether it's right or wrong, I think they're going to do what's wrong just to avoid more problems. That's my opinion.
I think so too. I think they'd probably be terrified to, like, appeal this, because it's like, I could see someone going after the judge or something. I mean, there's so many emotions around this. So, and I do not want a repeat of 2020. No. Although it's already happening. I mean, I feel like the riots and the protests are like worse than 2020 almost.
Because they got away with it in fucking 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think this would be so much worse, because like the shit that was happening in 2020 when you're fucking burning down police stations, breaking into police stations, burning down police cars. It wasn't just your typical destroying neighborhoods and businesses. Like, they took it one step further with going after government. And now we've seen what they've done at the White House last week. We saw what they did at the DNC this week. Like, I think the protests, I'm saying that word in quotes, are really just escalating and escalating and escalating. And this is still such a hot topic in the minds of so many people that I just think this would explode.
Well, and I think about like how they're saying there's all these sleeper cells here in America. They would totally use that as their advantage to make a move. So yeah, it's so crazy. It's a crazy story, but I just had to bring that up because I'm like, damn, it really does go against everything we were told about that case. So
yes. And that's the other thing too. Like, how did they fucking get away with lying about all this from the beginning? Like,
right. And will anything happen to that medical examiner that flat out said,
right,
I'm not going to do this because it goes against the narrative. So yeah. Just kind of breaks your faith in the justice system. If anyone still had faith at this point. I was
like, what are you talking about? Mine's been broken for a very long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure yours especially, because you lived
That's
it.
why I went to I'm no longer a cop.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, yeah, that's our Friday update. I tried to start it positive, but I can't help it. I mean, it just never goes that way for very long. Okay, well, everyone have a great and hopefully peaceful weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.